This nigga don't want to finish the game. Hey, how's your day? My name is Renmei. Now, as I'm sure some of you guys have noticed from some of my earlier videos, art, discussions on stream, I used to be a Yandere Simulator fan. I was around during the early days back in 2015, 2014, which was a while before I graduated elementary school. Now, I'm wrapping up college soon and this game is still in development, but despite that, this game has been a huge part of my life. In fact, my whole being an artist is because of this game, and the friends I have now is because of this game. But after everything Yandere Dev has done, and after basically moving on with my life, seeing that the game is still within a state of limbo even after all this time is sad. To many people, this may not come as a surprise. Yandere Dev has always had a reputation of being an incompetent game developer with nothing more than an army of lobotomized teenagers that blindly accept any and all excuses that he gives. Which is true most of the time, and honestly, even more true now. As a former fan, I always stood by Yandere Dev and his development choices, mostly because, just like a lot of other people, I looked up to the guy. I thought the game was fun, and I have fond memories due to the game and its community when it's not on some hypocritical Puritan bullshit. Growing up, I never really thought the reasons why Dev couldn't finish the game as soon as possible were bad reasons. The main reason he gave was that he didn't have the resources to make the rivals meet the standard of quality. Hindsight says otherwise, or more so, hindsight says it didn't matter. For some reason, Yandere Dev at some point in the game's development started to add a bunch of criteria that he needed to implement the rivals. Voice acting, animations to make them pop out and stand out from other students, cutscenes and what have you. And that would require tons of money. Yeah, he doesn't have that excuse anymore. As you can imagine, after the controversy back in 2023, a lot, if not, all of the volunteers left the project. And I do remember seeing a post of an interaction someone had with Yandere Dev, and he basically said that the game would be voiceless and that it was an unnecessary thing to do in the first place. But he is still looking for voice actors and working on a bunch of quality of life features, which is saying something that many Yansum detractors have been saying for years, but many fans just simply didn't believe it at the time. He does not want to finish the game, and more so, he can't finish the game. It's not due to a lack of ability, because 80s mode proves that he can do it, but because it's his job, and after that, what's left? People have been saying this and similar sentiments for years, and until recently, I never really believed it, but looking back at some of Dev's development with being older and hindsight, I can see it. Enter Kokona Haruka. So, before Osana was put in the game, Yandere Dev would test out the various game features on a different character, that character being Kokona Haruka. Kokona was simply meant to be a guinea pig, a test rival for the elimination methods. That just sounds so weird to say off the tongue. Players would do the methods on Kokona, give feedback, and Yandere Dev would ideally know what to do and what to adjust for Osana. But tell me, why is she voiced? Why does she have an animatic dedicated to not only expanding her character and backstory, but showing an elimination method that was never even put in the game for testing? And how much did these things cost? You see the problem here. If not, I'll spell it out. Kokona had way too much work and care put into her for just a guinea pig. And all the while, Yandere Dev says, I need money for voice acting and animations for the rivals. I understand that a lot of people volunteer to work on the game for free. But, assuming that the VA was commissioned, why not use some of that money to commission voice work for the rivals instead? You know, the main thing you should be working on? And I can already hear some of you saying, well, that's because he's a scammer. But the thing is, he technically isn't scamming anyone. His salary comes from his Patreon, and it states, For as long as I'm receiving donations on Patreon, I will continue to expand Yandere Simulator with new content. which a lot of people have read as, "You give me money, that'll go towards the game." However, Yandev would clarify on various other places like the debunk page that the Patreon isn't the money for the game, it's just his salary from working on the game, which technically isn't backpedaling. Saying, "give me money so I can work on something," is more of a vague sentence when you really think about it, as it doesn't describe how the money will be used for you to work on that thing. You can easily mean your bills, your house, and your powers, which are essentials, and that would help give you time to work on your project. Thing is, almost no one has this interpretation when looking at the description. When people read a sentence like this, their first and almost the only thought that they'll have is, "Oh, this money is going directly into the game," not, "Oh, this money will keep you independent so you have time to work on the game." Not to mention, he used to make videos almost twice a month to update his audience, which should put some money in his pocket, but I don't want to spend this whole video pocket watching him. But the point is that he had the resources, just not the focus. But now, it genuinely does feel like he's dragging his feet with the whole project because he pretty much has to. Because he's barely making enough to get by now. His life will basically end when the project does, and it's kinda sad. Because things really didn't have to end up this way. One of the main problems is that he's tying himself down too much by AAA video game development methods, rather than just accepting the fact that he's an indie dev and he's not really gonna have the means to just go all out like he envisioned. I really don't think that he's going out of his way to scam people, but he started to think that this game needed to be this huge thing when it doesn't really. Be honest with yourself when answering. What was the reason you came to Yandere Simulator if you were a fan of Yandere Simulator at all? Did it seem fun to you? Did you like the aesthetic contrast of the cute and flowery presentation towards the dark and eerie mood shift? Did you see PewDiePie or Markiplier played it and thought, "Hey, this game looks cool"? Some huge story, lore, character animations, and voice acting are not really what people want from Yandere Simulator to begin with. We all saw a fun sandbox game with an aesthetic we found interesting. End of story. Yet Dev thinks otherwise. He thinks he has to not release the rivals unless they're gonna have all this quality stuff. Unless they're gonna have all this quality and polish to them. He thinks the rivals need to be a certain way in order for people to like the game and its content, when there's a game mode that actively disproves that point. I loved 80s mode so much that every day whenever I could, I would install Yonsim on the school computer and basically speedrun through the rivals. Even at home, one of my favorite pastimes was just playing around with the various elimination methods in 80s mode. I even did 2 whole streams using the different ways that you can electrocute someone to death on the rivals. 80s mode proves that even without voice acting, cutscenes, or whatever, the game can be a joy to play. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, 80s mode is a separate game mode with completed rivals, but it lacks the voice acting, animations, and basically all the quality stuff that he promised for the base game. I know what you're thinking, and yes, looking back on it, it was a huge waste of time. The goal of 80s mode was to prove that he had the ability to finish the game, while also showing that the game still needed the quality needs to meet expectations so that people would donate to the Kickstarter. When in truth, nobody would have cared. He's an indie dev. People would have understand why an indie game can't have a cinematic cutscene every second. But people can't stand if you are creating a game mode to prove you are capable of finishing the game. At best, it shows that you're letting the unnecessary criteria get in the way of making actual meaningful progress. At worst, it validates and outright confirms the idea that you are actively halting the game's progress just to make bank. His plan was to make the demo, then start the crowdfunding campaign in order to work on the other rivals, but in truth, he simply could have dropped the first 5 rivals with no new animations or whatever or what have you, started the crowdfunding campaign, and then finished the other 5 rivals proper while going back and adding the quality stuff to the first 5. Because again, no one came to the game for cutscenes, top-notch voice acting, or whatever. They came to have fun, and it wouldn't hurt the IP at all to just push all the quality stuff aside. It wouldn't be weird, it would just be indie development. Look at Friday Night Funkin'. They started a crowdfunding campaign back when the game's chart editor was the biggest, most unusable piece of dog shit ever. But people were having fun with the game and they donated to the Kickstarter. And now look at the game. It has cutscenes, a proper chart editor, and a bunch of stylish things. And yes, most of the earlier content lack cutscenes, but that'll be saved for the full game. And honestly, the rivals needing all this flair is something that he put onto himself. People would have understood if Yandere felt the need to change his plans, maybe a year after he announced the rivals. If he said, hey, this development plan is too ambitious, I'm gonna reel things back and add the rivals as is, and add a bunch of the cool stuff later with the money from the Kickstarter, it would be cool. But he can't necessarily do that anymore because 1, people are dead uninterested, and 2, because yeah, if we're gonna wait that long, then give us what you promised and what we've been waiting for. Give us the cinematic, well-voiced, deep AAA game that you've said it would be all those years ago. But he can't do that now because of the controversy and people not wanting to work with him and or give him money. And the fact that the story mode, which is just a bare-bones taste tester for him to prove a point, ended up becoming a hit, it proves my point that Yandere Sim doesn't need to be a AAA game to thrive. And because 80s mode is actually fun to play, it almost makes the past decade of development feel like a waste of time because again, he could have done this from the start and add all the quality fluff later. Ultimately, with the amount of counterproductive game development moves, Dev is left to just stretch things out more intentionally than ever because it's all he really has now. Granted, there are fans that will likely be right by his side no matter what, but as for what happens next, I hope the best for him. And as my parting words, you artists are doing a very bad job at getting the characters on the Rule 34 website. Like, I'm pulling my weight, so why can't you? But that's all I have to say, really. I hope you all have an amazing and fantastic day. I love you.
Take it to the side, she's still thinking I'm about her clothes. All about my clone, he's still thinking, got away with those. When I'm laying on her couch, I'm on her pills, I overdose. I don't finish, but it's working out there.